Hello, everyone, and welcome to Moementum Mondays. On these weekly series, every Monday, we invite one inspiring young man or woman to our show and talk to them about important topics, including investing, financial planning, and financial education. Many of our guests include fellow YouTubers and investors who I've followed on YouTube and enjoyed their contents. Without any further ado, let's get into it. My name is Mo, and I'm super excited to have with us Scott. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey everybody, how are you doing, Mo?
Awesome. No, I'm super excited, super pumped to have you on the show. I've been watching your videos, Scott, and thank you so much for accepting my invite to join the show. I think you're going to bring a super interesting perspective to this episode.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, let's get into it. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, Scott?
Okay, sure. So my name is Scott. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and no relation, Scott in Scottsdale. I've been in Arizona most of my adult life. I'm 34 now, and the reason I'm on the channel and talking with you today is related to my real estate experience, which I started investing in about 10 years ago. So my current situation is I do still work a corporate job from 8 to 5. I also invest in real estate pretty heavily on the side. And I also recently started a YouTube channel about 8 or 9 months ago, and I'm sharing my experiences there as well.
You mentioned your YouTube channel, Scott. Do you mind sharing with us why you started in the first place?
Very good question. And yeah, it all goes back to, so I've worked, like I said, a corporate job for pretty much my entire adult life. And I climbed up the corporate ladder pretty early on and found myself in management roles. And I found myself feeling really fulfilled by the filling my days with helping people, developing people, coaching people, mentoring people. And so when I got started with real estate investing, I always wanted to see if I could find a way to incorporate that side of me of that where I really enjoy coaching and developing and mentoring people, but through real estate instead. So in the back of my mind, I always thought like maybe I'll write a book someday, or, you know, I wasn't sure exactly what it looked like, but I figured first things first, I need to get some real experience under my belt. And then after that, I would like to share those experiences with the world. And so, you know, fast forward to last year, and I finally just kind of built up the courage to start my channel and start filming videos. And they started off a little rough. I didn't know what I was doing, but I feel like I'm improving every time with my editing and being more comfortable on camera. But that's the reason is I just genuinely enjoy helping people and sharing my experiences and telling my stories. I feel like there wasn't enough of that going on when I first started in real estate investing myself. And so I want to be able to be someone who kind of pays it forward and helps other people who are looking to learn to invest.
And that's amazing. I mean, for you, having started with real estate, that's such a young age. I think you were around 24 or so when you started it. Right now, over the years, you've collected and learned a lot of lessons along the way, sharing that with your audience. I believe a lot of the videos that you've made are related to real estate, though it seems like you're branching out a little bit and getting discussing some other topics I've noticed most recently.
Yes, I try to keep the core theme real estate related. So yes, I do branch out a little bit, and you've noticed that more recently because it's a good problem to have, but I recently sold out of 3 big deals. And so I don't currently have any active real estate deals right now other than a rental property that I own down the street, and then this house that I own that I live in. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my content for the past several months was me sharing my experiences with these investments that I had actively going on. And now I'm in this position where I'm looking for the next deal. And so I've shifted the focus of my channel in the meantime to be able to still put content out. But once I find the next deal, I'll go back to sharing those experiences and doing more kind of vlog style videos where I take the viewers along for the ride to go see the property and learn about what happens during the inspection period and all of that.
Looking forward to it. I'm going to do a little bit of flashback to, I think, when you were 24, about 10, 11 years ago. In one of your videos, you mentioned that was the very first time that you bought your first property, and it was in South Scottsdale, Arizona. You mentioned in that video that you bought it around 179. Later on, fast forward in 5 years, you sold it 315. That was one of your most profitable purchases that you've done. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And maybe how did you get started with real estate in the first place?
Definitely. And first off, hats off to your due diligence. I really appreciate you coming so prepared with these questions. So that is a fun story. So that was the first house that I purchased for myself. And at the time I was actually looking for an investment property. I don't know if you or your viewers have heard of house hacking, but it's the idea of where you buy a duplex or a fourplex and then you live in one unit and then you rent the other units out. And so you almost live for free because your tenants end up paying the whole mortgage. But the market out here was really competitive at that time. And so I was going after some duplexes and fourplexes, but I wasn't getting any under contract. And so I decided to pivot and just buy a single family house and just have roommates instead, because I figured that was the next best thing. And so I did that, and it worked as planned. I had roommates and they basically covered my mortgage, but it wasn't necessarily, it was still my primary residence. So I don't look at it as my first deal, but why I look at it as my most profitable deal is because not only did I make good money on that house when I sold it 5 years later, but that house is a lot of what inspired me to start flipping houses, because the house was $179,000 and it was a beautifully finished home, nicely remodeled, you know, the kitchen, the bathrooms, the flooring, everything. And here I was, first time home buyer with a very, you know, didn't have a whole lot of money to put down. So I needed something turnkey, ready to go. And so I was looking back at tax records and I realized I just bought this house for $179,000. And the person I bought it from just bought this house for $103,000 6 months ago. So I'm like, they're onto something. You know, not only did they probably make some good money on this house, but they provided a great service. You know, I was looking for my first home and a place to live. And so I was just infatuated with this whole concept. So again, I made good money on the house itself, but the house also is what inspired me to move on to start flipping houses. And shortly after I did.
It's almost like it's kind of kick-started your journey because it piqued your interest. You really did a lot more research on it. And from there on, kind of, you kind of got to that system, right? If you can replicate the system and get it on from there, why not?
Yep, definitely.
Have you done a lot of deals since that first purchase?
Yes, I have. I've looked back, and this sounds crazy, but I've lost count of how many houses I've bought and sold over the years, because there really have been so many and so many different kinds. But it's been an average of 2 or 3 per year since then, and primarily house flips, where I buy a house for $300,000 or $400,000, and then I do a cosmetic remodel and then sell it for a profit. So most of the deals have been house flips, but I did one new build about 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was 2017. That was a lot of fun. So we scraped that house and rebuilt a new one in its place. I got into the rental business and the Airbnb business over the course of the past several years as well. I've since exited that business, but yes, I've done a ton of deals since then. And originally I thought that I was starting a house flipping business, and that was my plan and my vision and my goal. But I quickly realized that I could have become a master at house flipping, but I would have missed out on a lot of opportunities, because there were other opportunities that were coming my way that weren't necessarily that cookie cutter house flip. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of competition in house flipping too. So I always needed to be adaptable and be willing to pivot to different styles of investing. And still to this day, I'm totally open-minded. My phone could ring later tonight with some off the wall deal that I've never heard of before, but I'll be open-minded to looking at it and running the numbers.
Keeping your options open. Now, do you have a real estate license, Scott?
No, I don't.
Oh, wow. So it's not a must essentially for you to have it to pursue this investment from an investment lens.
Correct. Yeah, there are some investors I know who they have a license themselves, or maybe their spouse has a license, just to save that on that expense. For me, it was just, I actually, right out of high school, I got my real estate license, but very long story short, I put my license to inactive and became a mortgage loan officer instead, because there was more opportunity there for me at the time. And I've never looked back. I'm glad I went through real estate school at such a young age, because I learned a lot, but it's almost like a conflict of interest for me to have my license, because I think I would be distracted in all the nuances that come with being a real estate agent, and I'd be held to a certain standard that agents are held to, where I just want to stay focused on my business and building my business. And then when I have questions around contracts and transactions, I can go to a real estate agent and they're my expert, and I can really lean on them as that person to help me navigate through a deal.
You're really tapping into their expertise for that, and you perhaps focusing on more so finding the right deals that is best suitable for you. Now, you talked a lot about different examples of residential and even Airbnb. Now, I know in one of your videos you introduced you buying actually a commercial real estate. So definitely you're keeping your options open. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that story? How's that going? And I know in that video, if I'm not mistaken, you had talked that was a very good experience for you, that you were in fact continuing to look for more of a commercial leads as well. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So for those that don't know that story, I started looking into getting into commercial real estate about 3 years ago. It started with me pursuing apartment complexes. So I was looking for a 10 or 15 unit apartment complex, much like whenever I was looking to buy my first home. And I quickly realized that space was also very competitive. And so it was really hard for me to find a good value add deal when I was looking for multifamily. And so just fast forward to last year, I got connected with a commercial broker who specializes in medical space, specifically medical condo units. And I started to have a lot of conversations with him about investing in medical condo units. And it's a very long story, but one thing led to another, and I ended up being turned on to a deal in Chandler, which isn't far from where I live. And it was a vacant medical condo unit. The person who occupied the space prior went out dissolved his business and decided to sell the space afterwards, of course. And so it was vacant, but I purchased the property, and then we held it for about 3 months before finding a tenant, a new doctor who fell in love with the space so much and the location that they decided to ultimately buy it. So they were only a tenant of mine for a few months before we closed on the transaction, which was, February? It was about 6 weeks ago or so. Wow. When we finally closed on that transaction. That's not the way that I envisioned that one to go. I planned to buy it, find a tenant within 3 to 6 months, and then hold it for 5 years. But we bought it, found a tenant in 3 months, and then ultimately they wanted to buy it, and that's just what made the most sense. But I've been fascinated with commercial since I got started, and long term, I knew I always wanted to move my business in that direction, but I wanted to have a lot of experience with residential first, just because it's comfortable. We all grew up in 3-bedroom, 2-bath house or something similar like this. It's just very comfortable for me to wrap my head around the idea of buying, fixing up, and selling houses like this. It was very scary to me to think about investing in commercial early on, but now I've become more comfortable with it.
How much of a big deal the numbers play for you when it comes to selecting the right deals? Is that really a major factor? It feels like you don't necessarily get emotional judging by how, for example, for that commercial real estate, you decided that the numbers were right, you decided to sell it.
Yep, I would say, for me, I try to leave emotion out of it. Other than my own primary residence, like the one I'm sitting in, there's no emotion involved with any of the real estate transactions that I do. And the only reason there's emotion involved with this one is to make sure that my wife is happy. But right, with that commercial deal, the two most important things are, do the numbers make sense? And then is the location right? So no matter where I'm investing or what part of town, or whether it's a commercial or a residential or anything else, I want to make sure that I am comfortable with the location. So I always look at every detail of the location, like where does it sit within the neighborhood? What do the surrounding houses or businesses look like? What does it feel like when you're driving up to the business from a mile away, from every direction? And so those are the two parameters that are most important, the location and the numbers.
Now, Scott, there are different school of thought out there. There are some, researchers that mention real estate can be a great investment, especially if you're not looking at it as a primary residence space, but more so as an investment. But there are others who are more, skeptical and saying that, there's a lot of hidden costs with that you're not aware of it, so you have to be mindful. What is your advice for our Moementum channel viewers who are considering real estate as an avenue for diversifying perhaps their investments and creating wealth?
Well, so my advice before anything else is to get educated. So start by, following channels like yours, reading books, blogs, podcasts, get educated, building a network of people in your local community, real estate agents, contractors, stagers, designers, everyone in the business. Just start talking to people. And through these conversations and through your studies, you'll start to learn more about the business. And then I've talked about this on my channel before too, but you don't want to get stuck in that analysis paralysis phase where you're just in this never-ending stream of education. So spend a good amount of time laying a light foundation for yourself to where you're not going into it irresponsibly. But after you have a foundation of education, do your first deal. It's going to be scary. It's never going to be comfortable, and it's never going to feel just right. But you just need to get your feet wet with your first deal. And of course, I recommend trying to be as conservative as you can with that one. As far as, if you think it might cost $30,000 to remodel the house, pencil it out where it's going to cost $40,000 to remodel the house, because it probably will, and kind of pad all your numbers in every direction to make it a little bit of a safer investment for you. But you've got to just rip off the Band-Aid and do your first deal. And you will learn so much from that first deal, and you will gain so much confidence for that first deal that your second one will follow shortly after, for sure.
Kind of learn by doing, and how important that is, right? So
yeah.
What are some of the key lessons that you can share with our viewers, Scott? Any other lessons? You've been investing in real estate for over 10 years now. Any major lessons that you've learned that you want to share?
Yeah, so I think the first one is that things never go according to plan. So no matter what type of a deal you're pursuing or an investment you're pursuing, just expect things not to go according to plan, and be okay with it when that happens, and be quick on your toes and able to be nimble and adapt whenever things don't go according to plan, and have patience with the process as well. I think those are two, I think the two most important takeaways from my perspective, because investing in real estate is a great way to grow your net worth and long-term have a significant net worth and great streams of passive income. But it's a process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But here I am 10 years in, and I'm just starting to barely feel the fruits of my labor develop. And that's having done 2 or 3 houses or projects every year for 10 years straight. And I'm just starting to finally feel like it all is clicking, and that I've kind of made it in some right. So be patient with the process. It's not a get rich quick scheme by any means, but it can be very lucrative and rewarding in the long run.
That's great advice. Thanks for sharing that, Scott. One of my last questions is about, we asked this question mostly from all of our kind of guests around any books that they are going to recommend. And I know in one of your videos, and I'm reflecting back again on videos, you talked about that reading books, maybe, and I thought it was a very catchy title, by the way. That is how you hate reading books. But then you explained that it's not that you actually hate it, but you like really more visuals and learning by doing, as you talked about earlier on. But you talked about 3 of your favorite business books. Now, whether those are the same answers you want to provide or not, my question to you is, what is perhaps your most favorite finance/investing related book that you can recommend to others?
Okay, yeah, so I will pull them from that video, because that video is where I spoke to my favorites. Rich Dad, Poor Dad holds a dear place in my heart, because I read it right at that age of 25 when I was buying my first house and thinking about getting involved in real estate. And so whether or not I agree with Robert Kiyosaki as a person nowadays is irrelevant. I really enjoy the principles of that book and the motivation that book gave me to get started. So that I would consider that my favorite. But a more modern book that I also talked about in that video is The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. He's also very controversial, but for good reason. And what I like about the 10X Rule, simply states that if you 10X your efforts, you will multiply your results. Not necessarily 10X your results, but your results will multiply if you put 10X the effort than you thought you should put into achieving a goal. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that's such a strong lesson. We as humans are capable of so much. And, if you set out a goal to make $50,000 per year from your side hustles, whether it's real estate investing or stock investing or anything else, if you instead just 10x that goal and ask yourself, what is it going to take to achieve a $500,000 stream of income from my side hustles this year? To some people that might think unrealistic or a goal that's way more challenging and impossible to achieve. The reality is, if you put in the effort that it will take to reach a $500,000 stream of income from your side hustles this year, you're not going to hit that, but you'll do a lot better than your initial goal of 50,000 more than likely. So I think that's just such a strong lesson in terms of goal setting and acknowledging what we are capable of as people.
So true. Pushing yourself and trying to set higher expectations and higher bars for yourself, because as humans, as you said, we are capable of a lot, and it's just recognizing that and really working to get there.
Yeah.
Any final advice, Scott, that you have for our viewers before we wrap up this episode?
My biggest final thoughts or takeaway for you and the viewers is just what helps me a lot in staying motivated to do everything that I do, whether it's real estate investing or the YouTube channel or my day job or my relationship with my wife and my family or my friends, are revisiting my why often. And for anyone who knows Simon Sinek, he's someone who kind of pioneered this concept of defining your why. And it's defining your why means, why do you do what you do? You know, why do you wake up in the morning? What gets you going in the morning? What gets you excited? And so really think about your why and your purpose, and spend time doing things that make you feel fulfilled, because life is too short. And I just think that it's so important to spend your days with things that'll make you feel a sense of fulfillment. And we all have that power and that ability to just ask ourselves that question, do some self-reflection. And I think that you can improve your quality of life so much when you do that. That's
so powerful. Thank you, Scott, for sharing that with our viewers. And thank you for joining the show. I know for me, definitely learned a lot from you, even on this call. And I'm sure it's going to be the same for our viewers. Thank you so much again for joining the call.
Thank you for having me, Mo. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
My pleasure. Well, thank you so much, guys, for watching this episode of Moementum Mondays. I hope it was valuable to you and you learned something from it. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from the video as well. We've added a contact link to our invited guest to the description of the video, so be sure to check them out. And lastly, if you haven't done that already, please subscribe to Moementum channel. Here on Moementum, we post weekly various videos about the stock market investing, stock analysis, financial planning, and finances. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.